turn once again to a sector embroiled in an eternal conflict between the Orc Marauders and the HDF and Battle Brothers. In the last battle report, the Battle Brothers and the HDF failed to destroy the Orc Rock that was lurking in the mining colonies just outside Progen, and now they must stand shoulder to shoulder against this massive Orc invasion force. After weeks of preparation, Progen now stands ready to repel this massive Orc invasion. In the near outskirts of the system, the massive Orc rock cresses the horizon, and before them, a gigantic Orc invasion force led by Gaskull Manthraka stands right on the razor's edge of conquering this world, and befalling Progen the same fate as Halifax Prime. All available vessels have been scrambled to this operation, and this will be a battle of the ages as the very skies will burn with both Orc and human vessels. Orc Marauders kicked off the mission by sending forth their fighter squadron straight into the very heart of the HDF position, immediately blasting apart one of the HDF bombers from orbit around Progen. A second Orc fighter squadron soars alongside their allies and unleashes a hail of heavy machine gun fire, detonating the HDF ship. A HDF fighter squadron soars alongside an Orc Marauder squadron, but fails to knock out the vicious vessel. A supporting unit soars alongside the same Orc and opens fire of its heavy void guns, immediately annihilating the Orc vessel as it banks hard to avoid the laser fire. Another Orc fighter squadron soars across the void, looking to provide some screening action as the bombers soar towards the Phalanx Prime. The third HDF fighter squadron soars alongside the oncoming Orc fighter, and its heavy void guns rip it to shreds, scattering debris across the stars. The HDF gunship team thunders towards the Orc ranks, unleashing a hail of heavy laser cannon fire, which tears apart the first Orc bomber squadron. But, not to be outdone, another Orc bomber squadron tries to take on the role as a fighter, but fails to knock out the HDF fighter squadron in response. Its supporting bomber squadron then comes alongside the same fighter squadron and unloads a precise shot from its heavy void guns, absolutely annihilating the HDF force in response. The last of each side's smaller units then activate, with the Orc gunship team rushing forward, along with the HDF bomber team trying to get in position as the medium Orc ships begin their attack runs. The Crusher slowly trundles towards the Phalanx Prime, hoping to get into firing range soon enough, as the Orc border ship does the same against the ISS Nimrod. However, the Nimrod, not to be outdone, quickly moves up into attack formation and lets loose a heavy volley of its forward-facing laser cannon. However, this beam glances harmlessly over the bow of the ship and into the void beyond. The ISS Necro then attempts to do the same with its forward missile batteries, opening fire at the border ship. However, its forward salvo skirts harmlessly past the Orc vessel and into the void beyond. With the Orc rock moving ever closer towards Progen, it was time for the Phalanx Prime to move up into battle formation. Sighting up the majority of the Orc fleet, it attempts to unleash a salvo of rockets as well as turret blasts at the Orc fighter swarms and bomber squadrons. However, its attack failed. It then powers up its heavy forward laser cannon and opens fire at the Crusher ship, landing a decisive blow and dealing 2 wounds to the Orc vessel, bringing turn 1 to a bloody end. The tension across both fleets is palpable, as each side is attempting to gain air superiority in this unrelenting dogfight for the void, as the fate of Progen itself hangs in the balance, as these 2 gigantic fleets clash for the fate of the planet.
May the Founder protect you, brothers, and smite our enemies.
Turn 2's onslaught continued as the Orc bomber squadron lines up its attack run on the Phalanx Prime, with its heavy missile barrage striking a devastating hit against the massive battleship's command station. A second Orc fighter squadron then follows up this attack, landing another decisive hit, smashing apart the seeker round chambers of the Phalanx Prime.
Come this with me, scum!
The HDF gunship squadron then banks hard to the left, coming up along the rear of the offending Orc bomber squadron, managing to land a devastating hit with its heavy void guns, shattering apart the first Orc squadron.
Die, Orc scum!
With their path now cleared, the HDF bomber squadron then zooms towards the Crusher ship, delivering another 2 wounds to the massive Orc vessel. The Orc fighter squadron then banks away from the Phalanx Prime to come alongside the HDF fighter squadron and unleashes a devastating barrage with its own void guns, shattering apart the squadron with ease. The Orc gunship unit then trundles across the void, coming alongside the HDF fighter squadron, absolutely annihilating it with its forward-facing turrets. The Orc border ship, following in the wake of the Orc gunship unit, comes alongside the ISS Nimrod and unloads a massive barrage of its side-facing weapon batteries. However, the shots fail to find their targets. The Orc Crusher ship has much more luck in its shooting attack against the HDF gunship unit, as it comes alongside and blasts it to pieces with its heavy turret attack. Yet its rear turret attack fails to knock out the HDF bomber squadron. The ISS Nimrod comes alongside the Orc gunship team as well as the border ship and unloads a heavy attack with its side-facing turrets, which fail to break the Orc vessel, a broadside with the missiles, which shatter apart the Orc gunship team with ease. The ISS Necro, now veteran of the Gamora War, comes alongside the Orc fighter squadron and blasts it to pieces with its heavy turret firepower. The Orc Rock continues to trundle ever closer towards Progen as the Phalanx Prime banks hard to the right in order to meet the variety of Orc threats that surround it. In the extreme stress of the firefight, its side turrets manage to blast apart the offending Orc bomber squadron. However, its side missile banks, although managing to hit the Crusher, fail to do any damage, and its forward energy cannon beams wide at the Orc Rock, bringing turn 2 to a close. Both sides can sense the desperation in the air, as the closing of turn 2 marks a new height for the battle engagement, as many casualties strewn the battle space, and both sides are reaching a fever pitch in a desperation for conquest and defense of the world. With no small vessels left on the battle space, the Orc border ship comes alongside the ISS Necro, delivering a decisive hit against their forward missile banks. The Crusher then comes up on the rear of the Great Phalanx Prime, managing to land a hit against their mass accelerator cannon using side blasts of their weapon batteries. They then follow up this attack using their heavy top turrets, managing to deliver another wound against the Phalanx Prime, completely knocking out its mass accelerator in the process. The ISS Necro then thunders in between the Orc border ship and the massive Orc Rock, hoping to deliver a devastating broadside from both its missile batteries as well as its top turrets. However, its first attack against the border ship completely misses, yet its heavy cannons manage to deliver a wound against the massive Orc Rock. The ISS Nimrod powers up its rear thrusters and blasts up behind the gigantic Orc Rock, with its heavy turrets managing to deal a single wound against this monstrosity. It is not enough, and the Orcs finally enter the gravitational pull of Progen, and the final stages of the battle are set. Seeing that it is do or die, the massive Phalanx Prime comes up on the rear of the gigantic Orc Rock, delivering a barrage of shots from its heavy cannons. However, when the smoke clears, not a single wound was able to break through the Orc vessel. And as the Orcs laugh and chant at the success of the battle, the HDF and Battle Brothers can do little else but look on in horror as the Orc Rock descends rapidly towards the massive cities on Progen, and thus bringing us to the end of this mini-campaign, as the war for the Gamora sector comes to a bloody end and a decisive Orc victory as the Orc Rock plummets to Earth upon the blue world of Progen itself. However, this is but a footnote in the wider galactic war that will be told in upcoming videos on this channel. Stay tuned as we enter 2026, as the wider crisis in the Cyrus system comes to a head, as we explore the many worlds and conflicts that loom large across all reaches of this galaxy embroiled in internal war. From the rebellious moons on Thrax to Halifax's smaller colonies on Halifax 1 and 2, as well as the dreaded conflict on Dotrix, there are many more stories to be told and many more battles to be had.